When you think of Bitcoin, one of the last things you think of, or that you would never even think of, is Berkshire Hathaway. But are there parallels between the way that Warren Buffett structures his Berkshire Hathaway Class A shares and the value proposition behind Bitcoin? Welcome back, everyone. You are seeing this clip on Wednesday, which means we either got some very bullish news about the Bitcoin ETF so we can finally stop talking about it, or we got another delay, which means we have to talk about it for longer. Anyways, either way, I digress. We are pivoting. We're going to go to something else. Guys, if you like the content and you appreciate what we're doing at Pleb Underground, please consider subscribing. Anyways, let's move on. Let's take a look at this retweet from fellow Bitcoiner and pleb, Chef4073 or Chef Quattro. Here we go. Did you stack enough Anon? I effing didn't. Stupid life events. What's he talking about? Let's take a look at the source tweet. So the original poster that was retweeted was Oliver L. Velez, okay, fellow Bitcoiner, and let's dive into his tweet right here. Berkshire Hathaway, BRKA, is trading at $554,300 a share. Its price is out of reach of 99% of all human beings on Earth. You see, Warren Buffett never wanted his baby accessible to you, the masses. It was only for the elite, only for the privileged, only for those closest to the money printer. Making this too accessible to the masses might provide too much economic freedom to the wrong group of people. This is the attack that I believe will be used on you with Bitcoin, and this is why after trashing BTC for years, Wall Street is now tripping over themselves to get in. They're going to moon the price to remove Bitcoin out of the reach of the common man. They want to send this into the stratosphere. Why? Because it provides freedom. If you don't want the riffraff in your neighborhood, you don't lower the prices, you raise them. Listen to me explain it here. And he's referring to a podcast. But let's take a look at this this chart, right, from Berkshire Hathaway. Right, so you can see, I mean, it's just up. So look, let's talk about this for a second, because although I appreciate, right, I appreciate his take, I don't think it's entirely, that's not entirely the reason. So before I was in Bitcoin, or before I was a Bitcoiner, I used to just buy equities that paid a certain percentage of dividend every year. And what I did was something called a DRIP, a dividend reinvestment program, which means automatically every quarter, whatever I would get paid for holding the dividends, it would automatically purchase more shares. Now, what this ends up doing in the long run is that it ends up being able to create a secondary stream of income, or in some cases, if you already have two, it would create a third stream of income, or in some cases for retirement, it helps to supplement your pension, and you are able to get a stream of income from dividend paying stocks. Now, okay, so I'm explaining all of this to just to give you guys some reference of my experience. When I first got into stocks, I first paid attention to a lot of traders, right? Because I figured, right, that there's thousands of stocks. How do I know which one to pick? So my first angle was going and looking at trading. But then I forget who it was that I read, but an idea stuck in my head from what I had read, that if you want to know how to do something the best, then you should go learn from the best. So I started to try to determine who the best equities investor of all time was. And inevitably, you come up with Warren Buffett, okay? Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. You start reading about Berkshire Hathaway. So I got the book, The Warren Buffett Way, and that book explained to me essentially why he purchased shares in Coca-Cola, American Express, among other very boring staples, okay? Warren Buffett is essentially a value investor. He looks at companies that have predictable, ever-growing free cash flows, and essentially that has very competent management teams, okay? And what he does is that he looks to purchase either the company outright at a significant discount, okay, which is why Berkshire Hathaway owns so many companies, or they purchase their shares. right? Whichever one is decided upon by, Berkshire Hathaway management and Warren Buffett. And so the reason why I'm explaining this is because it's good to understand, right, what type of investor Warren Buffett is. So let's go back to Berkshire Hathaway. When Warren Buffett, first of all, if we back up, Berkshire Hathaway was a failed textiles company, okay? And without going through the entire history of Warren Buffett, he eventually came up with the idea to be able to use this failing company to essentially purchase what seemed to be down and out companies, but that could be profitable. Again, this is where the value investment proposition comes from. Anyways, so after reading The Warren Buffett Way, I got introduced to another book called The Intelligent Investor and a Securities Analysis. So all of this to say, I ended up reading through these books. Keep in mind, A Securities Analysis by David Dodd is by far one of the driest reads. So I caution anybody who like it. If you're reading that, it is because you really like numbers and you like dry theory. Okay, so The Intelligent Investor, though, on the other hand, by Benjamin Graham was really that was more of a kind of like a fun read. But either way, okay, the point I'm trying to make is this. Warren Buffett didn't actually structure his shares to be out of reach of 99%. This is what happened as a result of very high quality, long-term, right, low time preference actions. Okay, this took many, many years. And if you go take a look at because Berkshire Hathaway started trading in I think it was like the 80s or the 70s. And I mean, you were able to purchase shares of Berkshire Hathaway for almost nothing once upon a time. Sounds familiar? Kind of sounds like Bitcoin, right? In a way. All right. Yeah. And of course, I'm not trying to say that Bitcoin is a stock or something like that. That's just terrible analogy, but I'm just trying to explain the different values. So the truth of the matter is that what Warren Buffett didn't want is that he didn't want to create shares solely for the sake of creating trading activity. One of the ways to mitigate trading activity and volume is by having an increased share price. The higher the share price, the less people will trade it. Okay. And the other thing about it is that if you take a look, if you look at Berkshire Hathaway has been trading for, decades. You could look at the chart and one could argue it's volatile to the upside, but then you could make the same argument for Bitcoin. So the whole reason why I explained all this is I always like to imagine if Warren Buffett was younger, would he be a buyer of Bitcoin? And you know what? I am not 100% sure he would. My hopium is saying, yeah, for sure, he'd be a Bitcoiner because he would understand. But the thing is that I don't think he necessarily would. Now, the other side of the coin is that maybe he feels that it can't be controlled in the way that he would like, and therefore he wouldn't invest in it. That could also be true. But in my imaginary world, I envision that Warren Buffett, if he was younger, would have been a purchaser of Bitcoin. What do you guys think? Do you think that the only reason Warren Buffett isn't a Bitcoiner is because he's just too old and doesn't need it? To a certain extent, that's been my opinion for a majority of the time. I think he totally understands it, but at the same time, his incentives are so hopelessly intertwined with the traditional banking system, and he's at that age where it's like, I mean, does he really need Bitcoin? The other argument could be, yeah, his kids are going to need Bitcoin, but then the other side of that argument is, do they really need Bitcoin, considering his kids run Berkshire Hathaway? So. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Put it in the comments. This clip is brought to you by fellow Bitcoiner and pleb, Full Throttle Hodl, reminding you, go fuck yourself, stay sovereign, and I will catch you all tomorrow.